I want to start here with the definition of the word enemy. We looked it up in the dictionary. The dictionary defines the word enemy as one that is antagonistic to another, especially one seeking to injure, overthrow, or confound an opponent. Got it? So, if you raise your hand and promise to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic, for the Constitution, who would the enemy be? One that is antagonistic to it, especially one seeking to injure, overthrow, or confound it. Got it? So not people who want to update it or change it, because our founders allowed for that. You're not an enemy if you want to do that. If you want to injure, overthrow, or confound it, yes. Oppose? No, you don't like the Constitution the way it stands? Great, it's fine. That makes you a founder, not an enemy, as long as you want to change it through the methods that the Constitution sets up. It's the amendment process. But you're an enemy to the Constitution if you want to change the Constitution or obliterate it. You're not antagonistic. You want to injure it or overthrow it through collapse. You're an enemy if you want violence on the street, because violence will lead to overthrowing the Constitution. It's really terrorism. That's what it is. If you use violence to get the government to collapse something or change their minds, that's terror. And isn't that what we're seeing on the streets of Greece? It's terrorism. The whole thing is, honestly, you get people to cry out in terror, wreak havoc, enough havoc and destruction where people will change their behavior into the path you desire. Terrorism, if I may define it, I define terrorism as, dear God, just make it stop. Because that's their goal. If you lived here and it just kept going and going and going, eventually you, around your children, when you couldn't go out in the streets, you would just say, dear God, just make it stop. That's terrorism. So, let's start with the enemies of the Constitution as defined, the word enemy, as defined here by the dictionary. And I want to take a look again at Francis Fox Piven, because we could go take the metal detector and try to find some history of violence with Rush Limbaugh, but you're not going to find it. What you are going to find is Francis Fox Piven's article. Remember, she should know who she's dealing with here. Piven's article in The Nation came out earlier this month, and I want to go over some important parts. She said, and we've gone over some of this, so where are the angry crowds, the demonstrations, the sit-ins, and the unruly mobs? After all, the injustice is apparent. The unruly mobs, like in Greece. She goes on to say, mass protests might change the president's posture if they succeeded in pressing him hard from his base, something that hasn't happened so far in this administration, suggesting get out into the streets. In fact, despite some modest initiatives, the AFL-CIO's Working America, because she's in this article, she's again talking to the people who are unemployed. She said when people lose their jobs, they're all dispersed and they're no longer connected. So we need to find a way to connect them. Okay? Remember, she wants to connect the unemployed. She said, despite some modest initiatives, the AFL-CIO's Working America, which includes the unemployed among their ranks, or the International Association of Machinists, or your Union of Unemployed, known as U Cubed, most unions do little for the unemployed. Remember, she wants to connect them. Why do most unions not do anything with the unemployed? Because they no longer pay dues and are likely to be malcontents. Interesting. Note that only recently the prisoners in at least 7 different facilities in the Georgia State Penitentiary System managed to stage coordinated protest using only the cell phones that they had brought from guards. So it remains to be seen whether the websites, such as 99ers and Unemployed, blah, 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 can become the basis for collective action. And the internet, a global justice movement. So let's just see. We have malcontents that she claims are malcontents because they're unemployed. We need to gather them, and we need to look at what the prisons are doing. Then she says, second, before the people can mobilize for collective action, they have to develop a proud and angry identity. Now, this is where she parts ways with, let's say, the 9/12 Project that said, hey, people should get together. Not necessarily those in prisons or the angry malcontents, but now she's encouraging, while we encouraged values and principles, she says they need to develop an angry identity and a set of claims that go with that identity. They have to go from being hurt and ashamed to being angry and indignant. Third, protesters need targets. Has she been on a Sarah Palin website, or is this her own doing? Protesters need targets, preferably local and accessible ones, making the kind of angry response to angry demands. She goes on, an effective movement of unemployed would look something like the strikes and riots that have spread across Greece and in response to the austerity measures forced on the Greek government by the European Union, or like the student protests that recently spread with lightning speed across England in response to the prospect of greatly increased school fees. You have it? It's not, hey, let's get together in the Tea Party. She's saying it should look like the video I just showed you in Greece. Is that not inciting riots? Is that not asking for violence? Is this not outlining how to make it happen? She says the protests should be led by the unemployed young workers and by students who face a future of joblessness, who might just become large enough and disruptive enough to have an impact in Washington. She closes it with this: shouldn't we hope for another American social movement from the bottom and then join it? I go back to my definition of enemy. An enemy of the Constitution, foreign or domestic. It is defined as one seeking to injure, overthrow, or confound an opponent. All of that applies to what she is saying. We're accused of being government-hating, but they hate the government, government-hating, yet we cling to that Constitution. She is talking about riots, violence. There is no excuse for violence from the right or the left. I think the Tea Party gets that. I haven't seen this or anybody calling for this from the right, but if they do, I reject them. Maybe the media would want to teach this lesson to the left. You'd think they'd be able to find it. Maybe we'll send them our research as well. ABC, can you correct your mistakes? All right, so here's the challenge, America, and really it's to you to challenge your friends, but it's also really to the media. We can, keep going after this. Rush Limbaugh, get him off the air and play that game all day long. And we've been playing it for 20 years. It's not really working out well. Or we can talk about what's really happening, because there are dangers in our country. Over in Oakland, California. Oakland, California. Gee, aren't there always troubles in Oakland, California? Isn't that where Van Jones is from? Wait a minute. Didn't Van Jones storm the revolution, calling for violence? Anyway, in Oakland, California, CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, is promoting an event using this poster. CARE says, well, the message, it's being misinterpreted. Now, I mean, I don't know how you build a wall of resistance, don't talk to the FBI. I mean, unless FBI is, Free Beer Institute, I mean, I don't think I mean, how do you misread this? I'm not saying that CARE is a domestic enemy to the Constitution, but what I am saying is build a wall of resistance, don't talk to the FBI. Isn't that one of those things that make you go, Isn't it reasonable for Americans to wonder what the motivation is here? Imagine if the 9/12 Project would have had that poster. Bill O'Reilly is going to be talking about CARE's poster on The Factor tonight. I encourage you to tune into his program as he investigates what exactly is happening there. 8 o'clock Eastern. Don't miss it. From Wilmington, Ohio. Hello, America. There's something happening in Ohio. Something very, very different that is happening in Ohio. This town will save America. Miracle. Believe in miracles.